I call this meeting to order. Let's do a roll call.
Melton present.
Waldvogel present. Eglash present.
Cook present. Okay. No members of the public are here to give oral communication. Approval of the minutes.
Move
Okay.
approval.
Any second?
Second.
Any comments? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. 4-0. I have no changes to the agenda.
Chair Cook,
Yes.
for your consideration, since we are anticipating that Commissioner Foster may be able to attend but will be late, perhaps the item that,
Okay. We can flip the order.
yeah, we might want to flip the order.
The
and do-
non-numbered item with number 1.
Okay, so.
Oh, and so, in fact, we might want to start with item number 3 first, because at least Jane Ratchie is here.
That'd be great.
And then we might want to do it in reverse order, follow with 2, and then follow with 1.
Sounds great. I like that.
Okay.
3, 2, 1 will go.
Okay.
Reports from commissioner meetings or events? None. Director of Utilities report, please.
Thank you very much, Chair Cook, members of the commission. I have a few things to update you on. Although when I see the first one, it makes me nervous, given an earlier conversation with Commissioner Walfolger. But we're working on a gas safety brochure. During May, we focused on updating and distributing this key component of our annual gas safety outreach. In addition to including it in utilities bills and all new customer welcome packets, I believe you have a welcome packet there. These brochures are mailed out to a long list of stakeholders that includes local public officials, first responders, contractors, excavators, schools, and so on. And this is pretty much a requirement by the Department of Transportation. New water waste warning door hangers samples are at your places. That would be, yeah, correct. That would be this one. We created these for the CPAU and public works staff to use when excessive water runoff is observed. In enforcing our permanent ordinance prohibiting runoff, we wanted to let people know the benefit of the doubt, or give people the benefit of the doubt by starting with a friendly notification on excessive water use. Summer water efficiency outreach. The hot days ahead will be a prime time to achieve water efficiency savings, since over 50% of most residential water use is for irrigation. Therefore, as part of our ongoing drought response, we will be stepping up our outreach, both reminding people of simple steps like fixing irrigation leaks and touting our highest in the nation rebates for lawn removal and irrigation upgrades. Also, on the topic of water at your places, we have included the latest version of our very popular shower timer and hose and nozzle giveaways, as well as a new outreach piece about bottled versus tap water. I know these shower timers will be very popular with teenagers. Community outreach events and workshops. May 17th, Solar 101. We had our solar PV rebate. Well, just so you know, our solar PV rebate funds are running out, and we're trying to get residents to take advantage of them while they last. So at this May 17th Solar 101 workshop, we had about 24 folks. This is a little bit fewer than the usual turnout, so we may do more targeted outreach for the next one. And then on May 28, we had the CPAU programs and services where we were invited to present an overview of our residential and commercial rebates to the City Development Center's Building Safety Month Talk series. It was a small but enthusiastic audience that turned out for the talk. On the marketing front, oh, goody. Hello, Shiva. We have the Palo Alto Green Gas Program. We continue to work on the launch of this program. We anticipate program outreach starting in July and enrollment beginning in August or September. Water efficiency rebates have been temporarily increased. This is for a short time only. Rebate amounts for some water efficiency programs have been increased to encourage further water use reductions during drought conditions. Rebates for grass turf conversion in Palo Alto are now the highest we know of at $4 per square foot of lawn removed and replaced with approved low water use landscape design. We also have rebates for customer water efficiency equipment upgrades, commercial food steamers, and commercial clothes washers, and these have doubled through the end of September 2014. We have continued delivery of our home water reports to residential customers and observed a marked increase in customer calls, emails, and participation in water efficiency audits and rebate applications. The program is still too new to report conclusive results, but anecdotally, customers seem pleased with receiving water use information in a new and different way than a standard utility bill. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. As we have no unfinished business, let's go to new business. And again, we'll be going in reverse order, starting with 3, going to 2, then 1, then 4.
Good evening. This is Jane Ratchey, Assistant Director of Utilities, and I have the information update on the impacts on the drought. Did you want to? Okay. So I have an update on the impacts of the statewide drought on water and hydroelectric supplies. And first I'm going to go through a few basics that you may not know about the San Francisco regional system, just so that you know kind of what you're talking about or what I'm talking about with respect to all their different supply sources. So we'll go through that a little bit and then talk about where we are on those supplies and what Palo Alto's water conservation has been to date, and then just a little bit of an update on, not much of an update from last month on the impact of the drought on the hydroelectric supplies. So this is a picture of the San Francisco system, the regional water system. And so, let me see, does this thing work? How does it work? Not sure. No, I guess I don't know how to do it. Well, you can see the hetchy. Can I do this? No. The- Oh, you have to press it. Okay. So right here is the Hetchy Reservoir, and that is in Yosemite National Park, and that is the water supply source for the 85% of the water supplies in this regional system. They also have 2 other water storage reservoirs that are outside of Yosemite Park, Cherry Lake and Eleanor Lake, and they hold water there outside of the park, but they aren't, that water that is stored in those reservoirs is not used for San Francisco's water supply. Then the system of pipes and tunnels takes it to the Bay Area. There are 2 East Bay reservoirs, Calaveras and San Antonio, and then the pipes, Bay Division lines, north and south of the Bay, or under the Bay and south of the Bay. And then there's Crystal Springs Reservoir, which you have seen when you're driving up 280. And then there's this tiny little reservoir, Pilarcitos Reservoir. And so that's just to give you a picture of what the whole system looks like, because I'm going to talk about these different reservoirs separately.
Did you say that Cherry and Eleanor are not used for water supply?
They are not used directly for water supply for San Francisco, and I'll explain it because I'm going to talk about San Francisco's water rights and how that water is used. So, but it is valuable as stored water, but it enables them to store all their drinking water needs in the Hetchy Reservoir. Okay, so that's a picture we might have to go back to just so you can get what's really going on here. But San Francisco has junior water rights on the Tuolumne River. They're junior to Modesto and Turlock irrigation districts. However, they are established prior to 1914, which is the year that the State Water Resources Control Board was established. Therefore, they're outside of the reach of the State Board. So they're very valuable rights, even though they're junior to MID and TID. And so the agreement on how the water is shared on the Tuolumne between the districts in San Francisco is a key piece of information about how much each gets in a situation like we're in now in a drought. And I'm going to walk you through some different types of years of how this works. This right here is the picture of how the water is shared. And so at a certain point at Vernalis, they measure the water flow, instantaneous water flow, and everything that is below that red line, so if it's below about 2,400 cubic feet per second until about April 15th, when it about goes to a little above 4,000 cubic feet per second. All the water that runs off under that line goes to the districts. And so San Francisco doesn't get any water on the Tuolumne at all until and unless the runoff goes above that speed. And so you can easily have a year where it just kind of goes along under that curve and San Francisco can get no water. And so their water right is 0 for that water year. And so this is just the picture to show you what that line looks like. This is the last, this is water year 2012. And it's a picture that's very similar to water year 2013. Both of the years, San Francisco got about 175,000 acre feet, and that's whenever that went above the line, they get a little water. So you can see how the runoff went. So that's how much they got. The whole regional system uses about 250,000 acre feet a year. So 175 for the past 2 years is not really replenishing. And here's a year in 2007 where they hardly got any water at all. They got about 100,000 acre feet for the whole year that is available to San Francisco. And as you can see, the districts, they get almost the same amount of water all the time, and they have an amazing water right. These years, this picture is from 2006, but it's very similar. It's almost identical to the picture for 2011. In that year, San Francisco had a water right of almost 2 million acre feet, but of course they had no place to store it. So it can vary a huge amount, and there are years where they haven't really gotten any water, or maybe 30,000 acre feet, and that's it. So just to show you how that water right works, this is where we are right now for our water year to date. So San Francisco's gotten maybe 25,000 acre feet so far this year. So it's not looking too good. This is the total amount of water in storage in the 3 types of storage reservoirs that San Francisco has. So there's this amount down here are those 3 local reservoirs. So this is Calaveras, San Antonio, Crystal Springs, San Andreas, I guess 4, and the little teeny Pilarcitos. The upcountry ones, those are the mountain reservoirs. Those are Cherry, Eleanor, and Hetch Hetchy. And then the water bank. The water bank is water that is stored in New Don Pedro Dam and Reservoir that they cannot get to physically. But they're able to store water in there for times when they need it later. And so it's kind of a paper water. For example, this year, San Francisco has to put water down the Tuolumne River to serve the district's water right. And if they've built up water over the years into this water bank because they own that water, they just don't deliver the district's water right, and they take it instead out of their water bank. And it's their biggest storage reservoir by far. It has about 570,000 acre feet. Hetch Hetchy's about 360,000 acre feet. So it's a very big resource for them. But they can't physically get the water from there, again. And Cherry and Eleanor are used to deliver the water to the districts, their water right. So that's how that works. So this is where we are currently. And I just got this updated today. And so what you can see is there's a little uptick in the upcountry reservoir. So Hetch Hetchy's getting full, and it will probably spill this year. But what you can see is the water bank is getting smaller. And so they're storing as much as they can up at Hetchy, and they are unfortunately going into their water bank to do that. And if you look at the downslope here, I mean, you can see there's downslopes through the whole pattern here, but this is a bit of a concerning thing because these peaks right here every year are about April and May. And here we are now in May, the end of May. And so these valleys are right around December, January, and usually you go up after that. So you hit December, and then you go up until March every year. Well, here we were December, here we are, we're down in March. So this is not a good picture. Even though they have almost 1 million acre-feet in storage, and they only use 250,000 for the region. There's places they can't really get to this water, so it's not good. And so this looks like we're doing not very well for the past about 15 years. But if you look at a longer history, you'll see that back in the 1987 through 92 drought, it was very bad. It was much, much worse. And since that time, they've really operated the system a lot differently. It's a water-first system now. They don't generate electricity if it will use up any water that they have in storage. So they preserve water as much as they can. And so they hopefully don't get into the situation they were back in that late 80s, early 90 drought.
Jane, the water storage at New Don Pedro.
Thank you. I forgot. The water storage in New Don Pedro. I remember when I did the tour, the director, general manager of MID, whatever his title is, who was quite outspoken. I don't know if he's still there or not, but he very aggressively made the point that once it's in the reservoir, it's ours. There's no way to get it back. Does San Francisco have total control over what they release? If they're trying to draw down their storage in New Don Pedro, or is that a negotiation between them and MID? Or how does that really, how much control does MID have, I guess is?
They don't really. San Francisco, it's all ruled by the water right. And so San Francisco can provide that any way they want to, out of Cherry, out of Eleanor, even out of Hetch Hetchy, or they can draw down the water bank. And so, they keep track of how much water they have in the water bank. And now they only have like 250,000 acre feet in there, and it has a capacity of 570. So they've drawn a lot out of that bank. But he's right. Once it gets in there, there's no physical way to get it out. And besides that, it is a different quality of water. Only the water in Hetch Hetchy Reservoir itself is potable drinking water that has that doesn't have to be filtered. It has a filtration waiver from the surface water drinking rule that it's one of the few in the country because of the high quality. And so once it goes down the river and gets into New Don Pedro, or the water in Cherry and Eleanor also, that is not water that they can directly drink. They would have to treat that water. So it's not accessible, and it's not the same quality. And so you just can't put it into the pipeline there. Although there's a project San Francisco is doing right now where they're trying to consider a way to get water from Cherry into the Hetch Hetchy Aqueduct. And if they do that project, which they're getting special drought funds from the state or federal government to do this project, if they did that, then all the water in the Hetch Hetchy pipeline would have to be treated at Sunol. So this would be like not a very good situation where they hardly have any water in Hetch Hetchy, but they have some water in Cherry or Eleanor, and they're going to build a little pipeline and get that to the Hetch Hetchy aqueduct system and get the water physically down to the Bay Area, but then they'd have to treat it at Sunol, all of it. Because all the water from Hetch Hetchy is completely untreated and gravity flow from the reservoir to your tap now. So it would be a big thing, but that's one thing they can do. But yeah, San Francisco does have control for how they deliver the water right to the districts. Either deliver it from Cherry, Eleanor, Hetch Hetchy, or the drawing down of the water bank. So are there any other questions on how the system kind of operates? I didn't know if that was you already knew that stuff, but. So at this point, San Francisco's still calling for voluntary 10% reductions. They will be providing an update in the middle of June on that, and so we will hear something. And they've been making noises about people aren't saving enough, or the BOSCA agencies aren't saving enough, and they may, unless they see some better response, increase the request either from voluntary to mandatory or from 10% to 20%. So we're waiting for that outcome to see what happens in mid-June. So we'll be updating you when that happens. But
Excuse me for a minute.
Yeah.
Again, another question. I think I read something in the paper, that's just out of the paper, that Sacramento is unhappy with them only having a 10%, and they're putting political pressure on them to raise it to match the state standard. What's going on there?
yeah, it's clear that there's political pressure on San Francisco, so they may, who knows what they're going to do or how they can justify it, but they may call for 20% or mandatory for that reason. Because I'm sure they are getting political pressure. Not only that, Santa Clara Valley Water District, and we are in Santa Clara County, has called for 20% for countywide, including us, who don't get any water from them anyway. They have said that, and they're going to compare. They're going to show every retailer in the county how they're doing to the 20% goal. Even those of us who, our supplier doesn't ask for that. So I expect that to be in the paper too, and that's more political pressure also. So we'll see what happens. This picture shows where Palo Alto is. And so San Francisco called at the very end of January or early February for the 10%. And the blue line is what we were in 2013. The red line is where we are so far to date in 2014. And there's kind of a 10% reduction target there, and there's sort of an imaginary 20% line below that we aren't meeting. So that's the picture of where we are. Actually, the last data point on there for May 2014, we think that is a little too high. We're disputing that number with San Francisco right now. It doesn't match what we show on our meters. So that might be a little bit too high, and hopefully we can bring that down. And on the hydroelectric side, this slide is the same as last month, but the only difference is there's about 20,000 megawatt hours a year less in generation that we anticipate this month for fiscal year 14 and 15 than what we showed you last month. So the situation has gotten worse on the hydroelectric side as well. And that's it.
How much are we spending? Well, okay, so we're not getting as much out of Western or Calaveras, any of the hydro stuff. So we're having to buy brown power. And we're also having to buy RECs to green up that brown power.
Right.
So given this new projection for 14 and 15, where we expect to be buying a lot more brown power, how much is it costing us to green that up, and how does that compare with the, whatever it is, 15 1/100ths of a cent or 1.5 cents or whatever? We have a cap on what we're supposed to spend for RECs.
We do have a cap for the carbon neutral plan of 0.15 cents a kilowatt hour, and we'll be under that cap even though we're buying more RECs for 2013 and 14.
What about it gets worse at least your graphs show that it gets worse for the succeeding 2 years after this year. And
well, it won't. But yeah, I mean, it'll get worse in terms of not enough hydropower, but the cost is not going to exceed that limit. And we're getting more and more long-term renewables in place too. So yeah, I don't have the numbers, and I don't think they're that much different from what I presented last month about the extra cost we're paying for the difference between an average year and what we expect. But I think it was on the order of like $9 million, and that includes everything. That includes the RECs. It includes also, we have to pay more for the Central Valley Project Improvement Act Restoration Fund charges. So it includes all those additional costs because of the low hydro year. It's a lot. Yep.
I'll note that even with the REC, or even without the RECs, if that projected 2015 number is correct, we'd be buying some of the green power that we have been started contracting is less than that number. If you look at the far right side of the bottom.
Yeah.
So it'd actually be getting the renewables for less than the hydro power.
Right.
Thank you so much for that update. Oh yeah, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So if we end up with hitting a 20 or aiming for a 20% use reduction goal, I mean, if that's mandated on us in some fashion, or if we aim for that, what effect will that have on the fund reserves? I mean, what effect will that have on how we think about rate setting as we go into next year?
Well, it'll clearly have a big impact, and we're looking at that closely right now. And we're doing a bunch of things trying to prepare for the eventuality of a mandatory cutback, including trying to get together some drought rate schedules that we bring forward to have in our back pocket in case we needed to implement them rather quickly. And so we're looking at all the impacts, the financial impacts, the impacts on the reserves, and then what would we do if we needed to quickly implement a new type of drought type rate schedule.
And to that point, how do we think about emergency drought rates versus state mandates on cost-based rate setting? I mean, what takes precedence in those?
It's all cost-based. It all has to be cost-based.
But the thing is that, I mean, the cost of what's delivered to us hasn't changed. So the amount that's being delivered to us changes, but the cost of what's delivered to us doesn't change. So how do we balance the requirements of cost-based versus emergency rates?
Well,
Just like to understand how this works.
It's the same as we did this year. This year in the budget, we assumed that we were going to have to cut back 10%. So we had that anticipated. So basically, we have to design a rate that's going to give the revenue requirement that we need with less sales. So I guess I'm not really understanding exactly what
if
you're
you're
talking about.
asking if we would deviate from Prop 218? I'm not sure I fully.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to understand is, it seems to me that the fact that we have a budget issue that's related to the amount of consumption tells me that we may not have completely succeeded at setting all the rate elements based on cost. I mean, it strikes me that's the root cause of our problem, and so this may be something we need to explore as we look at sensitivity of our total revenue to usage. So I just think we have to be careful on how we operate with this.
It seems to me we've understood all along that the price we're paying for water is a largely fixed cost, but the way we bill it is a largely volumetric cost. There's nothing new about that information. So it seems to me that it's clear that when usage decreases, rates have to go up. People's water bills will still go down, but the volumetric charge has to go up to cover our costs. I don't think there's anything new about that.
Or the fixed charge.
Thanks so much. So let's go to item number 2, or it was number 1 on the original agenda.
Well, I think we're going to go to this item
I
on the Power from Local Ultra Clean Generation Incentive
Yeah.
Program. It's the
Yes.
old item number 2. And we have Senior Resource Planner Shiva Swaminathan. Shiva, we don't have a presentation, but you are here to answer questions.
Okay, so questions.
Do we have any idea why nobody wanted this?
What is that?
I mean, do we have any idea why there was no enthusiasm for this?
It was originally floated because there was one customer who was interested in something like this. That's what it was originally designed. Sorry. It was originally designed because there was one customer who expressed interest to do tri-generation, electricity generation, cooling, and heating with a with a combined heat and power system. And that customer lost interest, and there was nobody else after that. That's so broadly why our electric rates are cheaper. So it's better for them to take electricity than generate themselves. And there's not a good combined heat and power load in Palo Alto. So those two together, I think, is what drove it.
No, let me, yes, but does anyone else have any comments? I have one question, which is, does this have any relationship, will this affect in any way the anaerobic digester, or the proposed anaerobic digester?
I don't believe so. There will be discussion on that topic in month of August, but this is a cleanup of a system which is outdated.
I move the staff recommendation.
Okay, any discussion? We have a motion and a second. Okay, we'll have a vote. All in favor? Aye? Aye. Any opposed? None, so we have a 4-0 vote. Thanks very much, Shiva. Okay, we will now move to item number 1.
Yes, the
But
first item.
It was originally, didn't have a number on it, so if there's an
Oh,
old
no,
agenda
it-
out there,
It does have a number.
the old agenda didn't have a number on it. We had to write it in.
Oh, yeah.
So, in case someone has the old agenda,
Oh.
it would be item 0.
I don't think it made it anywhere except maybe into your packet.
Okay.
So as it turns out, nobody else saw that
Okay.
flawed agenda. It has now been corrected, and
It's now been enshrined on video for millions
Yeah.
of people.
I feel better about it.
now we made a little.
I can rest easier then.
Okay, yes, you can rest a little easier. We published the correct one. And we have Senior Resource Planner Carla Daly to talk about a gas prepay arrangement that we would like you all to consider.
Thank you very much. Here's a outline. We have a lot of subjects to cover. Hopefully they'll be more interesting than tedious. And I'm not going to go through this as we'll be stepping through little by little. The concept of taking advantage of our tax-exempt status for commodity purchases is not a new idea. We've been talking about it among staff since the 90s, mid-90s. But as far as the history of prepay and discussions here at the UAC, in 2004, in the original gas utility long-term plan, we had been looking internally at prepays, but the ultimate recommendation in that gulp was to not pursue any prepays at that time. In 2008, when we revised gulp during that time period, we said we would identify and analyze prepay structures. In January of 2009, we came back to the UAC with a quite lengthy discussion about prepays, although that did not result in a recommendation to council to enter into one. And then that brings us to our current gulp, where we started discussing that in 2010.
I'm sorry, I'll interrupt right now. Does
Sure.
At the January 2009 meeting, was that predating the stopping the laddering strategy? And did that have any
Yes.
impact on the?
That predated stopping the laddering strategy.
So we wouldn't have done it. Could we have done it at the same time as the laddering, or would it make sense?
We could have done it, and we'll actually kind of get into that discussion a little bit later, or actually, I don't know if we will get into it. I'll throw it out there. So the problem with a prepay where you're buying gas at an index-based price, physical gas at an index-based price, and trying to do a laddering strategy at the same time is that financial instruments are needed, because the way we laddered always was with physical gas priced at some other price structure, a fixed or a capped price. And so while it certainly would have been doable, and that's how many organizations have both a prepay arrangement and a hedging strategy, it would have been more complicated here because of our policies about financial instruments. So that's kind of a short answer. The current gas utility long-term plan, which was approved by council, has an objective of, under the supply cost management heading, to lower delivered gas cost over the long term, and the relevant strategy associated with that objective and prepays says take advantage of the city's low cost of capital to acquire gas supply and assets. So that's kind of at the policy level where this is supported. As far as just kind of stepping back and talking about gas prepays a little bit, because it has been such a long time since we've discussed them at this commission, and many of you weren't here the last time we talked about it. Municipal agencies can legally leverage our ability to issue low-cost tax-exempt debt to prepay for gas. Basically, in the return for that prepayment, gas suppliers are willing to deliver the gas at a discount. The discounts depend on many things, including what the interest rates are, gas prices. So the higher gas prices are, the higher the discounts tend to be. Credit spreads, volumes, transaction terms. Again, the larger the volumes, the longer the transaction term, the larger pot of money you're talking about, and so the greater the discounts. Other California munis who have actually entered into prepays are SMUD, Roseville, Santa Clara, Redding, and Modesto did one together as a consortium, and then a group of California public power utilities, SCAPA, did a prepay. I'll throw this up as a diagram that I'm going to break down and step through piece by piece, but just to know where we're going, this is the basic prepay structure. So what happens? A municipal entity forms a tax-exempt issuing entity, issues bonds, takes that money from the sale of the bonds, and uses it to prepay a gas supplier for gas. That gas flows to the municipal utility. The municipal utility pays for that gas on an index price less discount basis. Now there's a problem because the revenues coming back to the tax-exempt issuer are floating, an index-based price. The bondholders need a fixed payment, and so a swap counterparty comes into play to swap those index-based receipts for fixed revenue, which the tax-exempt issuer then uses to pay the bondholders the principal and interest on the bonds. That's how it works.
Yeah.
That's your basic prepay structure that's used over and over and over again.
So,
Was I talking really fast?
Yes,
what type of institution are the swap counterparties?
Banks, yeah.
So that's just strictly a money loop.
Yes, yeah. So over.
Even though it shows gas flowing, and there really isn't. It's just.
Well, yes, there really is gas flowing. The gas supplier is delivering gas to the muni. I mean, there really is gas.
Not over to the swap counter.
No. That's just money.
And why does the supplier sell, why do they like this? Is it,
They like getting a bunch of money up front, and they have a higher cost of capital than the muni has. So they get a lot of money now, and that's where the discount is generated from. So over the years, we've looked at a lot of different ways to participate in a prepay. So again, we're back to that same diagram. Again, here's the tax exempt issuer, the municipal utility. One option has always been for Palo Alto to go it alone, form an issuing agency, do our own prepaid deal, and be the only purchaser of that gas. Another possibility has been to join together with other entities through a JPA. That's what Modesto and Redding and Santa Clara did. And then you obviously form that entity together and you all take the gas. Another option has been to not be involved in the issuance, but to be named in the bond documents as a purchaser. And I have another slide that talks about the pros and cons of all of these, so I'll get into that in a second. Again, Palo Alto with whoever else would be named in the bond as purchasers would be the takers of the gas. The fourth option we've looked at is not be an issuer, not identified in the bond documents, but just look around for excess gas that other munis can't use for whatever reason. The power plant's gone down or the customer base went away or something like that. Sometimes there's gas floating around that needs to be used by a municipal utility because that's an integral part of the legal aspect of prepay is that gas has to be consumed by a tax-exempt entity, a qualified entity, that's correct. So that's another way to get your hands on prepaid gas. The muni gas structure, again, here's that basic diagram. The tax-exempt issuer is a financing entity formed by the city of LaGrange, Texas. Each one of these entities that's been formed has been called TexGas 1, TexGas 2, etc. MuniGas is a marketing entity that was formed to expand the program at one point. And the municipal buyers actually sit out to the side at arm's length from the transaction. So they're just buying gas from MuniGas and paying index price less discount. But this whole basic structure is identical to all the other prepays. So kind of talking, go ahead.
Is there any risk that either the city of LaGrange or that entity, if something happened to them, do the muni buyers being at arm's length, could they be shorted the money? I mean, could they lose out on having paid money up front but not got it through some fault of all those parties in between them and the gas?
So we're not paying any money up front. We're at arm's length from this transaction. So the short answer to that is, yeah, there's a lot of things that could happen to blow up this deal. The bondholders are the ones left holding the bag, and what happens to us is that the deal goes away, and we're back to where we are today.
So if the deal goes away for any reason, because there's all those parties involved, if something happens to them, we haven't paid any money.
That's right.
So we just go back out to the open market, which we're doing now.
Right. Exactly. So kind of a tabular look at the pros and cons of these different ways that we've looked at over the years of participating. Going it alone, we get maximum control. In theory, we'd get a large discount because we're not sharing it with anyone, but our volumes are so small that actually the discount probably wouldn't be that big. Obviously, a huge administrative burden to do this on our own. We kind of came to the conclusion a long time ago that we really weren't big enough or sophisticated enough to do this by ourselves. Joining together with other JPAs, we would be able to share that administrative burden, get larger volumes, larger discounts, but then there's the downside of just being part of a JPA and trying to all come together and make that work. Finding somebody else's prepay that wants to, is willing to list us as a purchaser in the bond documents is not a terrible way to go. It certainly lowers the administrative cost. We wouldn't have any control over the process at all. We would just be a name in the bond document. The entities that were actually issuing the bond likely wouldn't be willing to give us the same discount that they would be getting, and so the discount might be quite small, and we wouldn't have any control, as I said. Not being an issuer and just kind of looking for stray gas, it's out there sometimes. There's no volume certainty. It's usually pretty close to market price. There's just not much of a discount for it. MuniGas, we feel like is the best fit for us because the administrative cost is so low. We do get volume certainty. We're going to get a medium size discount. It's very much an off-the-shelf deal, which is both a pro and a con. It makes it easier to negotiate, but there's not a lot of negotiating that can happen.
In that right-hand column of cons, for the items where you say no control, or the one item where you say control diminished, the control you're talking about is the control over the terms and conditions of the deal.
Correct.
The notion being that if you're writing the deal, you're controlling it, but for the options where you're not writing the deal, including Muni Gas, you're not controlling the terms and conditions, but you're still choosing whether to participate or not. You're still
Absolutely.
reading the deal, and
Right.
you're exercising your ability based on the terms and conditions,
Right.
the rights that any buyer has to participate or not.
Right. Yeah. No control may be a bit of a misleading couple words.
It does make it sound harsher than
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
Once you've executed the deal, if you like the deal,
Right.
there's still plenty of legal control and certainty over the deal. There's
Yes.
a contract, and
Yes.
you've chosen to sign it.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
So, I presume this Muni Gas operation, well, I don't know. How long has LaGrange, Texas been in this business?
I was about to go into that in the next slide.
So glad you asked.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
Then I'll ask the other question I was going to ask.
Okay.
I'll wait for.
Wait, okay.
Are there others like? Is this the only deal like this around?
Yes, yeah, it is. It's the only one around. Yeah, interestingly enough.
LaGrange must be making a lot of money on
So a little history of Munigas. The first transactions were done through an entity called Texas Municipal Gas Corporation. Those deals were done in 1993 and 2003. Actually, those deals looked very much like the traditional prepay deals. All the gas was committed ahead of time. In 2004, LaGrange incorporated what is now known as Munigas to be the marketing arm and expand the program. So this is when it really started to take the shape of what it is today, where Munigas is serving this merchant function that not all of the gas is committed at the time that they issued the bonds. In 2006, $2.4 billion worth of bonds were sold to buy a 20-year gas supply from Merrill Lynch. As I said, not all the gas was committed, and so there was a lot of nervousness among the players in the market that the IRS would not like the way this looked, that it bent the intent of the law too much, that it wasn't just a group of munis getting together and with a defined need for gas that went out and issued the bond to prepay for it. This was an entity somewhat taking a chance that they would be able to market all of this gas to qualified buyers. The nervousness seems to have not been necessary. The IRS did not audit them. There were no obvious repercussions from that deal. And in 2007, another $1.9 billion in bonds was sold in order to purchase gas from J.P. Morgan. 2008, the credit crisis occurred. Credit deltas between the traditional players in these deals collapsed. Nobody was doing any deals in that time. In 2012, when the credit markets began to recover, Munigas issued another $1.4 billion in bonds and bought another 20-year gas supply from Macquarie U.S. Gas Supply. Macquarie's an Australian petroleum company.
Was there any interruption in gas deliveries during the credit crisis?
No, none.
And no deals blew up?
Well, there was a deal that blew up, not a Munigas deal. There was another prepaid deal where Lehman Brothers was one of the parties. And, yeah, we all know what happened to Lehman Brothers. So, yeah, I think it was Florida Utilities that were the takers. And actually, when that deal did blow up, everything happened just the way it was supposed to happen. The bondholders were left holding the bag. So that's the way the deal was structured, and that's exactly what happened. Today, Munigas sells to 105 munis in 20 states. 90% of that gas is sold under long-term contracts. Another 10% is sold as spot. Just as an aside, SMUD, for instance, is a spot gas purchaser from Munigas. They have their own prepaid deal. They're big enough that they've done their own, but they also have a spot contract that sometimes when there's extra gas floating around, they take that at a small discount. The way it works is Munigas keeps a wait list of interested buyers until they feel comfortable that they've got enough demand, and then once that happens, there's a lot of pieces that have to fall into place. Just besides knowing that you have interested parties, you have to find all those different players to put together into the deal, and the deal has to actually make financial sense. So once it looks like there's an opportunity to issue bonds for another prepay, TexGas, whatever, in this case, the next one coming up will be TexGas 4, is formed in order to prepay for the gas.
So I have two questions. The city of Palo Alto, if they decided to do this, we decide to do it, we might not be able to do it for some time because of the wait list.
Exactly.
Okay, and my second question is there any issue about not getting the physical gas? Is there any issue about physically getting it?
We do get the physical gas. And do I have a slide in here about that? I took some slides out. Hold on. Let me look real quick. I have a backup slide. Yeah, I took that complicated slide out. I do have it in the backup, but let me see if I can answer it with words, and we can rely on the picture if it doesn't work. The way it works is that all the gas that Munigas contracts for is physically delivered at the Henry Hub in Louisiana. And so since they've got munis all over the country that are buying this gas, and obviously we don't want the gas at Henry Hub, very few of their muni customers do want the gas at Henry Hub, they use an exchange agreement, and BP happens to be their exchanger right now. It was Shell sometime back. Right now it's BP. And so even though the physical gas is delivered at Henry Hub, we still do our deals with our master agreement suppliers, just like we always have. And that gas is delivered to us from our existing set of suppliers under our existing contract. So all the operational stuff is covered under our existing master agreements. And then it's just a matter of cash flow. So we pay Munigas pays BP, BP pays our supplier. But the physical delivery of gas and actually the negotiating of the underlying price happens just the way it happens today.
Is there any more risk? Like, wasn't there a situation where gas started being used so much on the East Coast that it wasn't available, or there were some shortages? Is there any more risk in doing the Munigas deal versus buying on the spot market in terms of actually getting the gas you paid for?
No, the operational risk doesn't change, and it's, like I said, still covered under our NASBs that we've negotiated ourselves with all of our suppliers. Discounts and rebates. The discounts for the TexGas deals have ranged in the 28 to 39 cent an MMBTU. Munigas really strives to not let discounts get much lower than 30 cents. As a frame of reference, that's about $1 million a year for Palo Alto, and about a 7.5% rate decrease on the commodity portion of our customers' gas bills, assuming a $4 per MMBTU gas price. The way discounts are determined, they're the maximum they can be after the program cost and bond obligations are covered by Munigas. So Munigas sets the discount. They decide what that's going to be. They're fairly conservative in the way they set it, and so oftentimes at the end of the year there's extra money left over that the municipalities get in the form of a rebate at the end of the year. The longer term commitment we're willing to make, the higher the discount that they will allocate to us out of the deal.
And this slide does not include whatever our program and administrative costs would be internally.
That's true. They should be pretty low. All we need to do really is just make sure we keep track of the amount of gas that we're buying, which is basically going to be just what we use. So, which we do anyway.
So the biggest incremental costs to us would be the upfront costs of the lawyers, of the research you're doing now to evaluate prepay, of the lawyers who would review and execute the contracts, that sort of thing.
Right, which we've already done. We've already hired. Yeah, we already hired a consultant to look at this deal, and then we hired an outside attorney to go through all the contracts for us. So all of that work has been done at this point. It's sunk. Speaking of our legal analysis, the heart of the transaction, the joint purchase agreement is the same contract that we use for our gas master agreements. It's the NASB. One thing to point out is that these agreements are subject to Texas law, which is not something that we normally agree to, but it's non-negotiable. The joint purchase agreement is a standard agreement that every single muni signs. We're all party to the exact same agreement, assuming that we're a participant in this deal. And so that would require a council waiver for Texas law instead of California law. Normally, we ask for one-way termination and early termination damages to apply, but since this is an index price deal, those two provisions don't really make that much sense for this type of arrangement, and both the commercial folks who have looked at this on staff and our legal analysis does not consider this to be inappropriate for this type of deal. Potential risks. The transaction could blow up, as we were talking about. That risk is borne by the bondholders. Our discount from Unigas would go away. We're back to where we are today. Opportunity risk. Clearly, if you make a commitment for something long-term and then something else better comes along, we wouldn't be able to take advantage of that. We did not identify any legal or regulatory risk. This program has a long history of success. The bond counsel are the folks who are kind of the known bond counsel for prepay deals in the U.S., and each deal is vetted by the Attorney General of Texas. There's no additional operating risk because the physical delivery of gas is governed by our existing NASB agreements. And in conclusion, we think Unigas offers a low-risk, low-cost way to meet our GULP objectives. And I did throw in one more slide after the stated recommendation. Timing-wise, executing contracts puts us on a wait list with when and if Unigas determines that the demand is sufficient and that there's the right economic conditions for a deal. TexGas 4 will be formed. The prepay will be executed. We have 180 days to terminate if deliveries have not commenced from, I think they've put May 1st in the purchase agreement. So basically we have till November to get out if nothing's happened. And after our initial term, which we're recommending 10 years, the deal automatically extends a year at a time unless we give a 1-year notice of termination. And what happens then is for the last year, so that after you give the notice of termination for that last year, your discount goes way down. So if we gave the notice of termination at the end of year 9, or at the end of year, at the end of year 9, then the last year of our contract would be at a significantly lower discount. So unless there's some really compelling reason, opportunity cost that we see, we'd have an incentive to just let it roll for as long as we could. That's all I had. It's a lot of information, so.
I wanted to come back to the question of supply risk in the unlikely event that the deal went away for some reason. Has there ever been a situation where gas wasn't available at the spot market at reasonable prices, so that if you do lose your right to the gas through this deal, you need the gas anyway, you're going to go and buy it on the short-term or spot market? Are there potential disruptions that could arise from that situation?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. Yeah, I mean, we'd be on that market.
Are you asking if the
Yeah.
gas is not delivered at Henry Hub, whether we still have the right to local delivery?
No, I'm not asking. I'm not asking that. I'm asking if I understand that we're paying our normal gas supplier. I understood that part of how the money flows.
Actually, we're paying Muni Gas.
Muni gas,
Mm-hmm.
but we're getting our gas locally from our usual supplier.
Yes.
But my question is, our right to that gas, if this deal were to go away, we've lost the right to the gas. We now have to go buy gas on the spot market, and so I'm asking if there's always gas available. I believe there's always I believe the
yeah.
answer is yes, but I wanted to
Yeah, there's
ask
always
it in the
there's
spirit.
always gas available, and the physical deal that we've done between us and our suppliers remains intact.
That seems odd.
Yeah.
I
Just-
understood you said that, but
Just
it
the
sounds
exchange
odd.
wouldn't happen, but the gas would still flow. We just wouldn't. Again, we just wouldn't get the Muni Gas discount. We'd.
Okay. Excuse me. And have you had a chance to think at all about whether prepaid deals in general are attractive regardless of the market dynamics? Or are they particularly a good deal when gas prices are low and stable as they are now, or high and stable, or anticipated to rise in the near future, or anticipated to fall in the near future? Is there anything about market dynamics that, in your opinion, are there any market conditions that make prepays more or less attractive than other market conditions?
Absolutely. High gas prices. The bigger the pot of money, the larger the discount. So, right. And so, built into a prepaid deal is it's a forward gas price. When two parties sit down and negotiate a prepaid deal, part of that is an agreed upon future gas price, and you multiply that by the volumes every year and roll that up into the total dollar amount. So, yeah, the higher the gas price, the deeper the discount. Really low gas prices.
As opposed to the
have
scenario
some
we're in right now,
discounts.
low prices.
Yeah.
But
So,
this is
so
a-
as good a deal as this appears to be, certainly appears to me to be a good thing for our ratepayers and consumers, compared to other market conditions, it's nowhere near as attractive as it might be, because we're in a situation right now of relatively low rates, and rates are forecast
True.
to remain relatively low for the foreseeable future.
That's absolutely true. So, yeah, we could wait around until gas prices skyrocket and just forego a 30-cent discount in the meantime. We could do that.
That's true. That wasn't my point. But yes, if someone was reluctant to do the deal, if they felt that the benefit didn't justify the effort, then they might say, gee, now's not the right time to do this, as you just hypothetically suggested. That was not my point at all. Actually, even though we've acknowledged that current market conditions are not the most favorable scenario for the benefits of prepay, I would actually make the opposite argument. Because of the benefits and attractiveness of this, and because all of the work that's been done throughout the city to get us to this point, I would think that there's a significant advantage in doing this now. We then become a player and a participant. We become a customer of Muni Gas. Our ratepayers start to realize immediately the modest, but I think still significant benefits. If we think about all the agony that we all go through when people compare our rates to PG&E's down to a fraction of a penny, even single-digit percent gains is a nice thing to do for our consumers. And then we're in a much better position to do this in the future as different scenarios develop. So thank you for the explanation, but I was not arguing to wait and see.
Thank you. It looks attractive, but a couple of questions about it. So the first one is, does the 7.5% get us close to or on par with PG&E's supply cost?
Well, our supply cost is about the same as PG&E's. We're both buying monthly index price gas right now.
So potentially this gets us below their supply cost.
This absolutely gets us below their supply cost.
Okay, well that's a good thing. Well, it is a good thing. Are we committing to buy all of our volume, all of our gas demand through this vehicle?
That's what we're proposing, yes.
That's what we're proposing. And does that have any, as we are starting to think about greening up our gas supply, as we're starting to think about the effects that might have on demand, or whether there might be other products that we want to buy in that mix, does this deal have any consequences for anything we might want to do around those efforts? You know, biogas, for example. I know that that's
Right.
not on the table today, but
Right. Well, I mean, assuming that we bought the biogas through one of our NASB agreements, it could still be, we could still buy that gas. We would just get the muni gas discount on top of it.
well, do we know that though? I mean,
Yeah.
is that's
Sure. If Shell was selling biogas, I can do a deal with Shell to buy that biogas and have it covered under the exchange.
But they wouldn't swap it at the same price, would they? They'd trade it at a price differential. I mean, I'm just
Right. The deal that we negotiate with Shell for any gas, whether it's green or brown, is a separate deal. The muni gas discount is on top of that. So if I'm paying Shell index -1 and my muni gas discount is 30 cents, I'm ultimately paying index less 31 cents. If I'm paying Shell index plus 10 cents for green and the muni gas discount is 30 cents, then I end up paying index plus 20, minus 20.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Commissioner Walpole's question. The question that prompts in my mind is, if we put in place the muni gas deal, and then a year or two later, you decide that you want a different color of gas than the gas that you had in mind when you initiated the deal, you seem to be saying that that's fine, that at any point that we want seamlessly, even once the deal's underway, we can change the color of the gas that we're buying?
As long as we're still buying it through our NASBs, yes. I mean, if we went out and wanted to build a biogas plant, that's a different situation. I don't see us being in that position anyway, but
So I think that you said it in the report, as long as we're buying gas from any of our regular suppliers, qualified suppliers, that are part of this muni gas consortium, or whatever you will, they're part of the deal. And I presume if you decided at some point to change from Shell to Chevron, or somebody, you know, another gas supplier, as long as they were part of the muni gas thing, you could change suppliers if you got a better deal at any time you choose. And just like you say, you can change the color of the gas, you could buy brown from one supplier and green from another supplier.
Right.
As long as they're in the muni gas group.
right. And we have multiple suppliers now, and we will continue to have multiple suppliers under the MuniGas program. We think that at least 4 out of the 5 of them will sign the supplier addendum to do that.
Commissioner Melton's question referred to suppliers that were part of the MuniGas consortium. I did not understand that there is a MuniGas consortium of suppliers. My understanding from your earlier answer was that we can buy from any supplier, and suppliers are not
Which one?
there isn't a MuniGas supplier consortium. MuniGas is a consortium of consumers like us, not as suppliers.
Right. But all suppliers that we're dealing with that we can buy gas from through this setup have to sign this supplier addendum. So they do become party to this agreement.
Oh, they do?
Yes.
So to Commissioner Waldfogel's earlier question about the ability to buy some futures, I'll wait till you're done.
Oh, I don't know what picture you're talking about. I have it on the backup slides, but it's kind of a complicated this is it. So this is that cash flow diagram that I was talking about before. So here's our suppliers sitting out here, but they sign the supplier addendum.
So back to Commissioner Waldfogel's question. If in the future some new source of gas emerges that we'd like to buy, let's say it's biogas or some other form of green gas, whether or not we could buy it within this Muni Gas program and get the Muni Gas discount is not automatic. Depends on that supplier signing the addendum for that supply.
No, once the suppliers sign the addendum, that's that they've agreed to this cash flow setup.
I think our presumption is that those types of products would come from anyway,
Yes.
the suppliers that we're already dealing with,
Absolutely.
because they're pretty active in the market.
Right.
So if one of these new sources of supply that Commissioner Waldfogel hypothetically asked about is being offered through one of our current suppliers, then because they've already signed the addendum and all of our suppliers will,
4 out of 5 will. Probably not PowerX, but we haven't bought any gas from them in ages anyway.
and we think those addendums, we know those addendums relate to suppliers, not to their specific source of supply. So if they develop
Correct.
a new product with a new pricing structure, that's just grandfathered in. They don't need to sign the addendum again.
Correct. Yeah. The addendum doesn't have anything to do with the specific supply. It's about this cash flow.
And if it were an entirely new supplier, then they would either choose to sign the addendum or they wouldn't.
Right.
Yeah, and typically if it's a desirable product that the market wants, they all start to get into it anyway.
Right.
But this might be there's a potential that we might be interested in a product that isn't attractive to anyone but us. Or
That's always a
maybe in the
possibility, but
beginning.
we're so small that it's hard for, much of what they do is not just one-off tiny amounts. They have to kind of get some volume.
Is there some sort of minimum amount that we have to buy through the structure? So for instance, if we said, no, we don't want to buy it from this, after all, are we compelled to do so?
If we sign up as a requirements buyer, then I believe we need to buy our full requirements from them. So I can.
Is there any chance, therefore, that this might deter us from choosing an anaerobic digester?
Well, I've looked at the anaerobic digester, and Jane, feel free to jump in and correct me as well as Carla, but, that's sort of on the electric side. I'm,
Yeah.
Well, it does create gas, so
But then you have to put it in the
we
pipeline.
would buy that gas and put it directly in the pipeline.
but we've really looked at that
I'm-
facility as an electric.
Okay,
Generation.
I just want to clarify that I'm asking this and asked it in the last item because I just don't want us to take an action without thinking about it that might have some impact to preclude or even encourage or discourage us from taking action in the future.
Not to put too fine a point on it. I think part of the question is, would building an anaerobic digester and buying that gas be in violation of our Muni Gas contract if, in fact, our Muni Gas contract requires us to buy 100% of our gas requirement from Muni Gas, or as Director Fong indicated, would that 100% requirement only apply to gas that we're delivering as gas, not gas that we're using for electricity production?
I don't know if I can absolutely answer that question tonight. I'd have to. Yeah.
Sorry, this is Jessica Mull from the, yeah,
Yeah.
from the city attorney's office. And I don't know that we've analyzed this contract with kind of buying gas from the anaerobic digester in mind specifically. My understanding was that we kind of set a yearly annual amount. That's kind of our target under the contract that we set sort of each year, and that's kind of our requirement.
Well, we give them an estimate.
Right.
But
then
but
that
it is
sort
a
of factors
it
in.
would be a requirements
Full
contract.
requirements. And then there's other factors that might limit our ability to take kind of the anaerobic digester gas and put it directly into our pipe anyways.
a lot of
associated with kind of the
factors.
safety, kind of state level regulations about the quality of the gas that then can go back into the distribution pipeline. So although I understand what you're saying about not wanting to foreclose or build that in, that's sort of a more complex legal workup, I think,
I-
if you're
I don't-
interested
I
in
don't
it,
think
we
any of
could
us were
certainly
asking
follow
about
up.
putting anaerobic digester gas into the pipeline.
Okay.
I think the question was, is there anything in the Muni gas agreement that would preclude us using anaerobic digester gas for anything at all? And we've heard a lot of reasons tonight why we think it's not, but I think the main thing we've heard is we don't know and we need to check.
Yep.
And I don't, and from a legal perspective, I don't see it interfering with the electric side of the anaerobic, just to echo what we said earlier, at all. You know, it's being able to buy under a power purchase agreement the electricity that's generated. I see those as two totally separate issues.
That's not the question either.
Okay.
I hear your
I don't know that we actually ever assumed we providing natural gas to the anaerobic digester, right? So I don't understand how that,
Maybe I'm
Runs
confused, and
afoul
I
of
apologize
this
if I'm the source of
contract.
confusion here. I thought that the anaerobic digester produced gas, and I thought that we had ideas of how we would then use that gas within the city, not delivering it to consumers.
so it would be used for electric generation, right?
I thought that was what we were going to do with
Yes.
it. Right. And so I think the question that Commissioner Cook and I are asking is simply to check after this evening to see if the Muni gas contract, which apparently requires us to buy 100% of the city's gas needs from Muni gas, not the forecasted amount, but 100% of our needs, whatever 100% is, if that would preclude us from converting anaerobic digester gas into electricity
No.
within the city.
No,
That's the
I can pretty confidently answer that as no. This is it says in the contract that this is for our retail gas utility.
Thank you.
Yeah.
D-
Yeah.
But have we addressed the question?
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, I misunderstood it.
No problem, because it wasn't very clearly asked on my part, but thankfully, yeah.
So you said that four out of the 5 of our suppliers will sign this agreement or have signed this agreement?
Will.
And how do we know that?
We've been talking to them. One of our suppliers, one of our suppliers is BP, who's the exchanger in the deal, and
Right.
is
So can we condition
no-brainer.
approval on this on some minimum number of those suppliers agreeing? Because if it were just BP, then it's not clear that they would pass the whole discount through to us if it was only one.
right. ConocoPhillips is also has signed this addendum for other customers of theirs, so
Right.
they're.
But how do the moving
no-brainer.
parts line up here? So do we have to sign the Muni gas agreement before we get those municipal buyers, those supplier agreements in place, or do we do that
I mean,
concurrently?
everything kind of happens at the same time. But yeah, you could definitely. Well, I think you could definitely condition your approval on that we're able. I mean, staff wouldn't be.
New agreements with new gas suppliers.
Yes, we could.
In the middle of this thing.
We could.
Then sign this.
Right.
So we're never gonna have a dearth of suppliers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you always have the flexibility to structure the transactions to kind of simultaneously close. So, once we get that in place, then we also get the addendums in place and all of that sort of stuff. So all the effective dates kind of happen at once, and that's part of the way the deal then is. Even though you have limited flexibility to change the forms of the agreements, I
Right.
think you have some flexibility to bring in the counterparties.
Yeah,
that
I don't
way.
think we want to come in here and tie your hands on negotiating process, but I think, I think that we'd all like to understand that all the pieces, we would expect all the pieces to come into place relatively simultaneously, so we're not, we're not losing out on the discount benefit from this transaction.
Yep.
Are there any other questions from the commission? Okay.
I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to approve the staff recommendation, anticipating the point that was just made about concern over whether in fact all 4 suppliers will sign the addendum or not. I'll make my recommendation as follows, and then of course there can be discussion and agreement or disagreement. My recommendation is we approve the staff's recommendation exactly as it is, without any comment about our expectation of the suppliers signing. And my thinking in doing that, can I mention my thinking in doing that as part of a motion? My thinking in doing that is, all right.
I'll second the motion as stated.
Thanks. So,
Without change.
so my thinking in doing that is that I have no doubt that we can
You were
trust.
you were eliciting a kind of nasty face or unhappy face from council, so it's worked out fine now.
My thinking is that I have no doubt that staff would let us know if the deal had evolved at any point in the process where it had become less attractive, and so I see no need to micromanage that process from here. I'm happy recommending as written, so that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, well, I'm inclined to support this, but I just want to comment that this is a lot to absorb. I mean, first of all, Carl, you did a great job with your presentation. Your flying slides actually explain. It's one of the few times I've seen animation on PowerPoint help.
Oh, good.
So
thank you.
congratulations.
I appreciate that.
It's pretty rare.
Hard on them.
So good job on that. You know, even though the boxes are all, you know, funny shapes and colors, but good job with the animation. I love it. But it's a lot to absorb. It's a long memo. It was a long contract. I did my best to soldier through the memo. I, didn't make it all the way through the contract. I apologize. And well, yeah. So it's not worth it. Well, no, you still want to look. You still want to go there and look for hand grenades. And but it's a lot to it's a lot to take on all at once. It sounds like you've thought through the risks. It sounds like you've thought through the alternatives, and on that basis, I'm willing to support it. But I am, this is something that I think deserves some pretty careful scrutiny and thought around all these issues about implications for future options we may have on gas supply, effects that this may have on other policy decisions that we may want to make in the future. These are all unknowable today, and so on that basis, I wouldn't stop a discount on the basis of something we have no idea about 5 years in the future. But it's a very complicated thing for us to sign up for all at once.
Yeah, I agree. I would have, in retrospect, I might have thought to do it over 2 meetings, but we are where we are. So we have a motion, we have a second. Any other comments, any other discussion? Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, says 4, and none opposed. Thank you. Yes, usually it doesn't have, yeah. It actually had a point to it, right?
Like the municipal buyer is always the pale yellow triangle.
I
And
thought the cash should always be green, though.
How long is this project?
Sounds like 10 years or 15 years.
No, the project of our staff analysis, I think is. Well, it depends on it depends. Well, the first time I ever wrote a memo. Not continuously, no, but.
When did this body of work that led up to this? When did we decide to take a look at this leading to tonight's?
About a year ago.
When we abandoned the lettering strategy, it became clear.
Well, that was longer than a year ago.
Really easy.
2010, we started talking about 2012, Gulp got approved, but then we didn't start really, but we didn't.
Trigger was when we got rid of laddering.
Yeah.
Made it a lot easier.
Yep.
It made it easier. So
Yep.
this is something that's been on our radar screen.
Yep.
We took it pretty far before, but then we knew that we'd have to do that.
But we didn't take
That's why I
we didn't
asked
take
about
Munigas pretty far before. We took a prepay pretty far before, but clearly doing a prepay is a whole different animal than this. This is a much simpler deal.
A process suggestion is this is something that I could see referring to a subcommittee. So it's something that, you know, because I think it deserves some really, you know, I think it deserves some iterations of discussion and analysis. So I could see doing it that way. I mean, I understand, you know, you brought us a pretty complete piece of work to evaluate, and I think I would probably be slightly more comfortable with it if something like this came up through a subcommittee.
Thank you.
I'll just comment that indeed, if we had had more advance notice, there's a variety of things we could have done. Some of my colleagues where I work are experts in energy policy and finance. I might have chatted with them over coffee to have gained some perspective. But in staff's defense, apparently this is something that for many years staff's been aware of as a potential for saving money. And so in that sense, it's been in their hip pocket. It's been on a back burner as something they've been aware of, something that they'd like to do when the opportunity was right. And as long as we were doing laddering, the opportunity wasn't right because of the added complexity. I commend staff for not forcing it down our throats and their throats when laddering was in place. I also commend them for having the awareness to realize that in the absence of laddering, there was now an opportunity to do this thing that's been sitting on the shelf for several years. And the analysis and the presentation and the consideration of options and the recommendation, I thought were just perfect. It's just an example of astonishingly good work, and so I commend you.
Thank you.
Jane, can you get us a water pre-buy?
I do agree with Commissioner Waldfogle. It would have been nice to do it some other way. So, item number 4, selection of potential topics for discussion at future UAC meetings. Are there any, gentlemen?
I have, well, actually, it's not topics, it's next scheduled meeting, so I'll wait till we get to that.
I have a request. I don't know whether it will make its way all the way to a topic, but you know, just pursuant to the whole question of how we communicate with our customers. I mean, I just recently received a whole packet, which I guess is the new customer packet. You know, we generate lots of pieces of paper. I think at some point we may just want to study how we communicate and whether people have the bandwidth and time to consume the material that we communicate. You know, whether we're communicating with them in the best ways. So I think it's just something that we should put on the radar, especially since we're going through some transitions in our marketing function. So it may be timely to raise that.
Did I introduce our new communications manager, Catherine Elvert, who's here? Oh, okay, sorry.
Last meeting.
Okay, great. Oh, yeah, it was the last.
That's why Commissioner Waldfogle was bringing up the topic.
No, it's totally appropriate, we understand. I still think it's a good packet, but we're happy to, happy to talk with you all about this and look for other avenues. Yeah,
Paying attention.
understand.
And I apologize, I missed the first part of your comment. Do you mind repeating that?
Oh, I was just making the comment that, you know, we generate lots of pieces of paper to communicate with our customers, and we should just do some work, do some analysis on how much attention they actually pay to the pieces of paper that we generate, that we put in the mail. You know, whether it's whether it's through bill inserts or through this kind of communication or through this kind of communication. I mean, I know that we're required to do a lot of these things, and we have budgets to do various kinds of things, but let's just think about what people have the attention spans for in the modern era.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a critical comment. It's just we could be thoughtful about this and think about what's the most effective way to be.
Part of the city innovation type of initiatives that are going on.
We are on item number 9. Are there any other commissioner comments? No. Okay, item number 10.
You know,
next.
can I just interrupt, just briefly? And it actually probably should have come up under unfinished business, so I'm looping back a little bit. But last time around, I think we did get the question about the purview of the Utilities Advisory Commission with regard to the fiber utility. And our city attorney has some quick updates for you.
Very quick, since I know we're near the end of the meeting, but I took a look at the question you all asked, which is there was a concern that we might have some fiber oversight responsibilities with regards to some of the matters that are currently residing with the Citizens Advisory Committee that was established by staff as directed by council, which includes kind of the fiber to the premises master plan, the wireless network plan, and then also relatedly, there's other staff initiatives underway, some related to sort of the Google checklist that you might have heard of. So I took a look at that particular question, and in starting off, I wanted to just clarify that there's no fiber oversight responsibility per se, but that there is advisory oversight in section 2.23 of the Muni Code, and it's rather broadly drafted to cover a wide range of issues associated with the long-term planning and policy matters associated with the various utilities, including the fiber optic utility. So I think something really gets into your sort of wheelhouse when it rises to the level of that long-term planning and policy matter. So that's as I looked at it. And two things sort of jumped out at me in the Muni Code as far as covering some of the matters that are currently sitting with the CAC. So the sections that are associated with long-term planning and policy matters associated with the development of the utility, including the fiber optic utility, and then also joint action projects that could be public or private that have an affect, the fiber optic utility in particular. So I think that presumably this broad scope could cover some of the matters that are with the CAC, including the fiber to the premises master plan, not as much sort of the wireless network plan, because that doesn't have the same kind of direct impact as I see it on the fiber optic utility. And the sort of threshold question, though, is when that work actually rises to the level of sort of one of those long-term policy matters that would come within your purview. Of course, if it came within your purview and council had said we actually want to supplant that jurisdiction and put it with the CAC instead of you, then that would kind of take it away from your advisory capacity. But when I took a look at the specific staff reports that delegate the authority to the CAC to do some of that work, it looks like they didn't expressly say that this needs to go in the CAC bucket and not reside with you guys either. So I think that there is some overlap, and then the question becomes when it hits a stage where it falls within kind of that policy advisory role that you have to play. And my sense of where those efforts are at is that they haven't hit that threshold set yet. The CAC is currently working on exploring ideas associated with an RFP. They meet on a sort of monthly basis. It's publicly noticed. They get together, they talk about it. They haven't issued anything sort of at an earlier stage. With respect to kind of the Google checklist effort, there was a submission of information, but there's no permit pending. There's no actual project underway. There's no key decisions to be made. There's no sort of policy forks in the road that we've hit as far as either of those efforts are concerned. So I think there was some concern that there might be a shirking of responsibilities, and legally I don't see that sort of happening. But nevertheless, I think we've discussed at sort of the staff level agendizing a fiber item for the next meeting in August to kind of see where things stand and provide you with an update in that regard, so you sort of have a better sense for what's going on.
Do you, the point that I worry about is, right now, it's pretty clear that we have oversight responsibility for the dark fiber utility. And at some point, I have no idea if it's true, but I would guess that the use of that dark fiber utility in a fiber to the premise project will probably come up. And it seems to me that at that point, it pretty clearly gets us involved.
And I think that it's a stickier question in terms of, the use of those fiber funds. If it starts to become kind of as a policy, we want to use fiber funds in a certain way. As a policy, we want to do things in a certain particular way. Then there's an advisory role, not oversight role, but advisory role, which is slightly different. But with regards to the fiber, I know that there's been some discussion or concern around the status of the fiber work at the Citizens Advisory Committee or the stuff that's happening at the staff level with respect to Google, and none of those type of policy decisions regarding sort of the dark fiber funds has been made as of yet. Which, you know, in the Muni Code, you're correct that there is a role for the UAC with regards to those types of matters. But we're just not at that stage.
In the Muni Code, is our advisory role as it relates to dark fiber the same as our advisory role as it relates to electricity, gas, and water? Or do we have is it prescribed to be more or less extensive for any of those?
It's in the Muni Code. It's usually listed in section 2.23 as kind of as amongst. It's in the same list as those other aspects of the utility. So there's not like a second tier level of review for fiber matters as compared with the other aspects of the utility. I also took a look back at the original. I think it was a couple of years ago where we expanded the scope to include fiber, and there was a lot of discussion about kind of the engagement section that we made changes to, but there was no real discussion either in kind of the reso itself or the staff report that accompanied it or the minutes that really expanded more broadly on exactly what was envisioned with regards to the fiber optic utility role, other than just kind of including it in there amongst the other utilities.
So going forward, would you encourage us and our expectations, and for that matter, City Council's expectations of the Utilities Advisory Commission, to be that we play a role with dark fiber similar to the role we're playing with electricity, gas, and water? Or should our expectation be that it's a lesser role?
Well, first, I wouldn't presume to speak on behalf of council. They always set, you know, kind of the contours of what they want you to consider and what they don't. And so that's always going to dictate in addition to kind of what's in the Muni Code. And I think as with other utility matters, we interpret kind of what comes before the UAC on a case-by-case basis to see how the individual contract, how the individual policy, how the individual informational item or proposal fits within section 2.23. So I certainly wouldn't say that there's a greater or a lesser. I think that as we deal with all the matters we bring to you, we look at it to see what the long-term, I think the key words from a legal standpoint are that long-term planning and policy hook. And it's the same for fiber as I would treat all the others.
Are those same words used to modify our advisory role for electricity, gas, and water?
Yes. Yes, they are. They're kind of in the way the section's structured. They are at the beginning of the section, and then underneath we have the more specific information related to the individual utilities. Okay.
Thank you very much. That's really important to us. So if there are no other commissioner comments, our next scheduled meeting is Wednesday, July 2nd.
Although,
We got two different pieces of paper. One says July 2nd, and the other one says July as it was canceled.
that's correct. Right now, we know that there are a number of items that we will not be able to complete for the July meeting. We have polled you to see whether or not, and hopefully you guys can, gentlemen can get back to Meritus Ward, but to see whether or not you can make the August meeting and whether or not we'll have a quorum. Right now, I think we have 3 out of 4 people saying they can attend, 3 out of 4 respondents, and so we're still waiting on 2 folks to get back to us. And we kind of assume perhaps Commissioner Chang would not be attending. So anyway, if you could let us know, that would be very helpful. If that particular August regularly scheduled meeting doesn't work for your calendars, then we might poll you for a different date in August. Oh, yeah, or July, maybe later in July. But anyway, right now it would be, from a planning perspective, easiest if we could do it on the regularly scheduled meeting date in August.
But July is canceled.
We're proposing that right now, but we're verifying that there is a quorum for August. I'd pretty much say, yeah, it's probably not, the regular meeting in July won't happen, but there could be a July meeting depending on our responses.
So there won't be a July 2nd meeting, but if the regular date in August doesn't work, then you will search for an alternate date in July that will be between the July and August regular
Or
date.
it could be later in August. We'll just have to, the number of logistics we have to deal with, including getting a room and making sure we have some media support. And then we work that through, and then we find out what days work for you for those dates that we've been able to work it through.
To be decided, to be determined. Okay, thank you very much. Meeting adjourned.